Let my honesty spill out through the pages.
You're listening to Escaping the Rat Race. I'm your host, Amy Leo, a singer, songwriter, and mental health educator. And our show is all about questioning the status quo and pushing the boundaries into what's possible for human beings and not probable. So tune in and get ready to escape the rat race, not only the monotonous 9-to-5 work grind, but also that incessant internal mental chatter that prevents most of us humans from experiencing more joy, peace, clarity, and freedom. On today's show, I'm speaking with Dan Orlando, a friend and fellow singer-songwriter who is a shining example of an artist who has truly escaped the rat race. He's recently shared the stage with Jordin Sparks at the Power of Love Gala that celebrated Tony Bennett's 90th birthday. So stay tuned for a no-nonsense conversation with a human being who really is making a living solely from music. You seriously don't want to miss this. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you are in the world. My name is Amy Leo from ReviveYourSanity.com, and I am very excited to feature today's guest. We have crossed paths once or twice before. Today we're talking with singer-songwriter and very talented musician Dan Orlando. And I'm actually going to kind of be quiet most of the time, Dan. So if you can just start sharing with folks how your musical journey started and maybe some of your biggest challenges along that way, along your musical journey.
Well, before I get into that, I just want to say, Amy, it's really nice to talk to you again. You and I met at Carrie Cole Voice and Music in New York about 4 years ago, I believe, both working on our craft and doing our thing. So it's great to be here. How my musical journey started, I kind of started from the get-go. I was one of those people that fortunately knew what their path was and what was going to give me the life I wanted very early on, in the sense that I probably knew how to play music and sing more comfortably than talk as like a child. So when I was noodling around on other people's pianos, I think my parents basically said, we should probably get him lessons. And they brought me into this piano shop in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, which is about 10 minutes from Philadelphia. And this old woman named Mrs. Khan, who was probably in her late 70s at the time, she was just in the back working on paperwork, and I started playing a song I heard from Sesame Street. And she goes, I'm coming out of retirement to teach him. I just want everyone to know that this boy needs guidance. He needs the right teacher. And we were the only ones in the piano store, so she was like announcing it like a press conference to 3 people. And that was the spark that lit my journey. She made it fun. You know, I had lessons when I wanted. Sometimes she'd call the house and say, do you want to come play piano today? And I'd say, no, I'd rather go out and play baseball. And she'd go, okay. So, but then when we were there, you know, she emphasized a lot about like making the notes on the page sing to you and forming a relationship with the music, and, you know, just concentrated on feeling and what music could accomplish through feeling, as opposed to getting too technical with me or bogging me down and a whole lot of theory. She just kind of let me run with my ability for a while. And I guess the point of all of that is, like, sometimes all I can take is one great teacher or mentor or someone that recognizes something in you to nudge you onto a path, and then it just kind of builds upon itself. So after that, I had a lot of great teachers, a lot of mentors and people that come in and out of my life that continue to nudge me a little bit further. But they trust my innate ability, and, you know, that I'm going to take what they say and process it and explore it a little bit more. So, yeah, that's how it started. And then I think the challenge, to answer the next part of your question, is just not letting reality bog you down, you know, because making a living as a musician, trying to do it with your own art, idolizing the people that you do that are legends and have made their mark as musicians. Like I love Elton John. Billy Joel was a huge idol of mine. John Legend, you know, Aretha Franklin, like people that are, you know, of a certain status that you would aspire to. The probability of doing that in a very big world where a lot of people are doing it too is slim to none. But you have to disassociate yourself from that reality and just say, what do I love doing every day? What do I want to get out of bed and do that's going to make me feel alive? And as long as I'm doing that and stringing a bunch of days together, then, you know, setbacks are just setbacks. But ultimately, I feel like I've already won, you know, because I don't do anything else. I don't have a day job where I'm dealing with in-office drama and a snarky boss, and, you know, my direct deposit didn't go in the net. I'm my own boss. I make my own schedule. You know, I work 18-hour days if I want to, or I sleep in if I want to. It's great, you know. So the rest is just kind of, okay, whatever happens, happens, and we move on. But ever since that first piano lesson, I feel like my biggest accomplishment to date has just been doing what I love to do every day and surviving and living doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge accomplishment, Dan, which is why I wanted to bring you on the show and show people that this is happening for everyday, quote unquote, people all over the world. We just don't hear about it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And
right.
a common thing that I can definitely admit that I've gotten caught up in, whether it's been in my creative pursuits as a singer or as an entrepreneur, and where I see a lot of human suffering exists no matter what topic we're talking about, is that the suffering rather only exists when people want to be anywhere else than other than where they are now.
Wow, that is so true. Yep.
You know, and it's so, life can be so simple, Dan. You know, when we just get back to the basics and have those moments of clear mind or being in the zone or being in the creative space, that's on offer all the time for every human being. And as I've seen, the only thing that gets in our way is exactly what you've been kind of talking about. You didn't really use these words, but it's what you've been talking about all of this extraneous thinking that we have of what's real or what's the right way to make music. And I just really applaud our teacher that she allowed you to be yourself. Oh my goodness. That is so awesome.
I keep getting lucky that way. I don't know if it's I gravitate towards that or I respond to people that way, but you know, Carrie was like that. I mean, she nudged me, challenged me, was honest with me. I still to this day, like, we're very close, but I don't always agree with her, you know, assessments of where I'm at or, you know, what I need to work on. But she gives me that, like, unfiltered, raw, honest impression of what I'm doing, regardless of if she thinks it's going to hurt my feelings or not. And it's invaluable. Like, you know, the people like that. Like, one of my biggest inspirations is Randy Pausch. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was famous for the last lecture. He was a professor at, I think it was like an IT school, and he had pancreatic cancer. And the last lecture is normally how you wrap up a year, and it has like an inspirational thing woven into it. But he addressed the fact that, you know, he only had 6 months to live. And one of the things he said in that lecture was, you know, when you're screwing up, it's the people that are on you giving you constructive criticism. It's the people that want you to grow, that still care. Then you're doing something right. You owe it to yourself to at least listen to that and take as much from that as possible. And yeah, it's like the speculating about the future and that sort of thing. Like, I kind of just see it as every time I take a step back, I go like, what did I do to get myself in this position? What did I do to be on stage in Vegas singing with Jordin Sparks, and then Tony Bennett coming over, shaking my hand, touching my face, going, "You have a bright future." You know, I couldn't have possibly sat there and planned that moment ever. Yes. You know, and how to get from A to B. All I did was lock myself in a room, put the work in, you know, practiced on my instrument, wrote a ton of songs, wrote a lot of crappy songs, and then wrote some good ones, you know, played a lot of crappy gigs and then played some good ones. And they just all kind of randomly added up to growth, you know, and indicators that I was growing. But, like, if I'd have sat there and said, my ultimate goal is to play a show in Vegas, then I would have come up short of what I was actually capable of, you know? So I'm with you there. You just got to, as much as you can, it's not to say that it's not easy. It's the hardest thing to do. You know, if like, we're all encouraged to dream and we should never stop dreaming. But the minute that starts to infiltrate you being able to live in the present and make the most of that day is when, you know, that can be a distraction.
Oh, for sure. I'm so glad I invited you to the call, Dan. This is great. So
you're getting me right after my first cup of coffee, too. So
rock
this
and
is
roll.
the perfect time. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's almost night for me here in Spain, but they eat like at midnight. You know, I go out for dinner at midnight here. I'm like, this is a crazy schedule, but I can get used to it. You know.
That works too. Except then you're gonna get the NPR type of Amy. It's very nice to be here. I'm talking to you from St. Petersburg, Florida. The whisper radio DJ kind of voice that announces jazz and really terrible news. You know.
Really terrible news. Yeah. I do stay away from that. But I do love.
I listen to a lot of NPR in case you didn't already ascertain that. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
I actually didn't know that. So, fun fact about Dan Orlando.
Yeah,
a lot
there
of
you go.
NPR.
A lot of NPR. Yeah.
People are getting the exclusive DL of Dan Orlando.
Yeah, this is hard-hitting stuff, guys. I listen to NPR. I'm giving it all. I'm holding nothing back.
and NPR, and he's escaping the rat race too. Rock and roll.
That's right. That's right.
But there's this beautiful piece in what you're sharing that I keep hearing you say, is that there is this innate wisdom, this kind of gut instinct, this passion, if whatever word we want to use, but that it propels you, and it always brings you back to center. You know, and the fact is that, there are logistics to deal with. I mean, I'm not purporting that if you think positively about something that you're never going to not meet the bills one month, you know. But when you realize that everyone is kind of living in their own world of thought, and even culturally we make up our own rules of the right way to live rather, and then individually we're doing the same thing, and that it's just layers and layers of made up interpretation. Yep. When a person can kind of draw it back into their center and just see it for what it is, and like you said, just be in the moment as it is, there's such a psychological and creative freedom that's available, and it's available to everybody. It's not special about you or I, you know.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, it's going to be unique to different people, you know, based on their abilities and their preconceived notions about what they're best at, if they haven't given themselves the opportunity to explore all of those things, you know. But yeah, if I had to break it down even further, it's what is it that you do in life, or just your day-to-day, what is the thing that you do other than like love and friendship and sex and like all the you know, built-in human experiences that hopefully everybody gets to live out, but the thing that you do that you love and that elevates you and that makes you a part of the conversation of humanity, right? Find out what that is, and then all the other stuff is just figuring out how to do that more. It's like homework, you know? Like, okay, I love to play the piano. I love to write, and I want to make big records that, you know, millions of people coalesce around, and we form a community. Okay, how do I do that? All the time. And what are things I can do that both subsidize me getting to that point more often and also prepare me for when I get the chance to do that? So I never take a job or something that doesn't involve me playing music, right? So I make a living playing music, but the ultimate goal is in the back of my mind. But at least I'm playing a wedding where I learn 80 to 100 songs. They're all covers that I want to play. They're all within a vein that I like and that I write and enjoy playing. So then I bring energy to that show. So I'm in front of people. I'm leading a band. I'm calling audibles. I'm putting on a gig and moving the needle in that experience, right? So then when I get to the point where I'm doing that with my own songs, I'm playing, right? We come back to what do I do that makes me feel good? What do I really want to do in my spare time in order to put myself in a situation to be successful at that? I had other jobs, but they all aligned with the same goal, you know? So like, whether that's music or singing or whatever it is, like, I think that's where people on your podcast can be selfish, you know, where there's no reason for someone who thinks they're a great singer and should be singing all the time to like work at a gas station. And I'm not saying that's a bad job, but more often than not, like the people in that position are either working towards a different goal or they're at that job because like that might be their ceiling. I hate to say it. I'm not, I don't want to denigrate anybody, but like if you want to be a great singer and you want to do it in a very specific way, well then everything you do in that vein should be leading towards that. So you got to make money. You got to do a gig. Okay. You start out singing other people's songs. You sing weddings. You sing clubs. You do sessions where you're a background vocalist. You join someone else's band. You coach someone singing. You see what I'm saying? Like there's a thread in all of that to where it positions you to do it. So that's kind of been my mantra, like that keeps me centered so that I don't go crazy when I'm not in the exact ideal situation of what I want to be doing. I'm at least contributing to that ultimate goal.
Yeah. I just want to actually ask Meg now. Meg, since you don't come from a musical background, I'm wondering, would you have any interesting questions that you'd want to ask Dan about this and the process and everything we're talking about?
Yeah. First, I loved everything you just said.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Living a life that's in line with your goal and your value is so important. It's like walking the walk and talking the talk, because if you stray from that, it's very easy to get sidetracked, with
Absolutely.
shiny objects and money. So what I'd love to know is, I don't know much about you. Have you ever had like a 9-to-5 job, whatever it may be, and then transitioning it into working for yourself and making your own schedule? Did you ever struggle in that area, like feel lost or not understand how to like manage your time or anything like that? And like, how did you overcome that maybe?
Sure. Probably when I was in New York, I was just getting started into a wedding band. And so for about 4 months, I had this job working outside of a gym on the Upper East Side where I had to wear a gaudy orange vest and hand out flyers to encourage people to sign up for memberships. And that was like $10 an hour. And I did it for like 3 or 4 hours a day, about like 4 or 5 days a week as supplementary income until I got into the band. But I did it for a couple of weeks until I was talking to my manager at the time and told him I was a singer. I was working on my own record. I showed him some stuff. He flipped out. So I worked in a situation where I was playing like a half hour per shift on the guitar with the flyers next to me and like working up songs on the guitar. Now I'm still not a guitarist, but at that point I was playing music at my day job. So it was like, I don't know. As long as I had that in mind and like, found some sort of way in whatever I was doing to contribute to that main vision, I can't say I've ever felt totally lost. I think the most lost I ever feel is if I feel like I'm letting things dictate my creative process to the point where I'm not giving it my all in the writing room or in the studio. And that's when I just kind of like remove myself from it for a couple of days. If there's just too much outside logistical stress or bills or things to where it's going to inhibit your ability to be creative, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a step back and go like, you know what, I got to just like do some housekeeping and then go from there. So yeah, for like that 5-6 months, I was at least playing a little bit of guitar, but there was some uncertainty in that. But that's just the other thing too, is like, I think you have to just come to expect that those types of things are going to happen. It's almost like I mentally prepare for adversity because adversity is the norm. Like I go back to what that Randy Pausch guy, he said another thing too, like the brick walls are there to keep the people out that don't want it enough. So I just anticipate running into them and know at some point I'm going to have to climb over them. And then I may need to take a step back and take a break. And that it's not all going to be this singular path to success. And then you're more mentally prepared for it. You go like, yeah, well, that's life. Here we go. On to the next thing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a great metaphor of how life is internally for us
Yeah.
that, again,
I'm telling you that, right?
ups and
Hey,
downs. Yeah.
if your listeners check out anything or take one thing away from this interview, I would go watch the last lecture by Randy Pausch. I think it's phenomenal. I watch it once a year. Of like any sort of motivational, just keeping me on track. It's like, a tech professor. So like, how would I possibly relate to that? And then I get 10 minutes into it and I go, oh my God, this guy is a gift. So.
Yeah. There's something about just being in life and being aware. I find I am more able to respond to life when my mind isn't as busy. But the truth is, I'm a human. I'm not an alien. And just like you said, there are times when it gets really busy. But I do know that that's not the best time to make life decisions for my business, my music career, my relationship. So if I'm in that low state of mind and I run the list of 5 things and all of them seem like they're going to hell, I know, maybe this isn't the time to take anything I'm thinking that seriously, because it's going to shift anyway. I don't believe this 98% of the time in my life. And I think people get really caught up, in believing these things, or really caught up in instant gratification almost. And I really love that on this call, you have not been talking about that at all. You have been very real and talked about the time and the effort and the work that it takes. When I speak to some people, and they're an aspiring creative or they want to build a business, and they only reached out to maybe 10 people about their business offer and they got no's, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to throw the hat in. It takes a little bit more than that. Again, if we allow ourselves the flexibility and the kindness to just be human, and exactly like you said, learn as we are in action, tweak it, and then continue to go from there. And I love how you just creatively incorporated, music to that job. This is what I love about human beings, is that there are so many possibilities on offer that
absolutely,
a lot of times, if we have really limited thinking, that we won't see. It doesn't mean we're not capable of it. We're just not able to see it because our minds are so busy.
Right. Right.
Oh, where do I want to take it now, Dan? I don't even know. Let's see. What has been the biggest lesson you've learned so far in life? let's scale it back and bring in your humanness, not only as a singer-songwriter and performer, but in life. What's the biggest thing that you've learned about being human?
It's that the older I get, the less I know, and that's okay. I think that's it. I think I would love to go back to my 16, 17-year-old self and go, those 20 things you think are in store for you in life? Cross out about 15 of them and just draw a blank line and see what gets filled in later. Because honestly, the world in and around us is evolving at a rate that you and I just aren't going to be able to conceive where it ends up in 10, 15 years. And so, why not just apply that to the own trajectory of my life and career? There's a book called Bowling Alone by a former Harvard sociology professor. And you can skip the stats if you're not a statistician person if you want. But he hypothesizes that there has been more change in the human condition in the last 10 to 15 years than in the previous 130. And he has statistics and things to back it up. So that's kind of a sidebar of the minute I wake up and think I know something through and through, that's the minute that I've told myself I'm not allowed to grow in that area anymore. I used to think that the best music, the only kind of music that was worth my time or people really reveling in or loving, had this, and this. Let's just call it great lyrics with depth, a well thought out, well crafted melody, a beautiful, simple, to the point arrangement, calculation, that sort of thing. But I always sort of denigrated the music that people like for fast food, or to like let go, the goofy dance stuff that like you and I used to grind to when we were 12 years old, which by the way, what the hell was grinding? Like we were just pointing our genitals somewhere and hoping they would land in someone else's jeans. Like what a terrible dance move. But, at the same time, like that music fit a need, it separated people from life. It made them feel. And so the older I got, the more people I worked with in all sorts of like diverse backgrounds of this business, I've come to respect their art form a lot more because I'm not putting labels on it. I'm not pigeonholing it into genres or niches or things that like, marketing people are supposed to worry about. So to summarize, like, I'm at my best when I just decide that I really don't know anything and I'm going to be quiet for a while because I know what I think I know in my head. So I don't have to go reiterate that to everybody I run into. But everything else is like an opportunity to learn from people that are going to like rock your perspective off a little bit. And so, yeah, I don't know shit, Amy. That's my lesson for everybody.
You and me both, Dan. You and me both.
Yeah.
What I love about what I'm doing now is when you and I met, I was working social work actually still. So I was in a traditional psychotherapy kind of setting, and it's very much more geared towards there's an expert, there's a right and a wrong way. And the truth is my clients weren't really getting better, Dan, because that's not how transition happens. That's not how peace of mind is experienced. Every one of us can only ever experience change and clarity and peace of mind or creativity or wisdom from the inside out. And that's just the truth.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate sharing that. And a piece of that is when you start to see that it's, again, like what you're pointing at, it's a neutral system, and just because you don't think you know one thing, it doesn't say anything about you as a person or anything about yourself.
No,
right?
You're right. It's not to downplay your worth. It's to maximize it. To say that you don't know things, it's a level of humility that gives you a competitive advantage in this world and allows you to grow, because the minute you stop doing that, you might as well retire and go off and live by some whatever and just like call it a life. But I'm not ready to do that. I don't think you should ever be ready to do that, and how many people do you run into that are maybe like young professionals and have like a systematic way of doing things, a systematic way of looking at people, a series of 10 to 15 truths that they abide by. That's it. That's it. I figured it out. I got it. Really? You got it? You're 30. You got it? You're done? But what are you going to do for the next 50 years of your life? Just run on those truths? Like there's no room for you to wiggle? There's no room for you to grow? I doubt it, but I'd rather always be making the next best record of my life as opposed to saying I already made it. The best thing I've ever done hasn't been done yet until I'm dead. That's it. I mean, that's how I see it anyway.
And I just want to make a clear distinction for listeners, with listening to Dan, and there's definitely, in my view, a correlation between how you're relating to the world, Dan, and how that is correlated with your success to be able to make a living as a musician. I think that one thing I see a lot of aspiring singers or songwriters or entrepreneurs is that they do get stuck in that perfectionist kind of mode. I remember, Dan, I couldn't believe this. I was out in LA a couple of years ago, and there was more than one person in the room who actually had spent the time to record an entire album and it never released it, Dan, because they didn't think it was good enough. Can you speak to that? And if someone's caught in that perfectionism, can you share a way that they could kind of overlook that or get out of that, or again, we're kind of showing that there's a different quality of life when you step outside of that. But if you can add anything else to that, I would appreciate it.
Sure, of course. Well, I can't, I'm in a similar boat in the sense that I've had a few small independent releases in my career that I've taken back. But the most recent was because I got picked up by a label and met a collaborator that I truly felt was going to take not only the material I thought I could move on to the next record, but I realized I needed a lot more development than I was admitting at the time if I was going to be the kind of artist that I wanted to be. So that mindset is actually okay. I don't, there's a certain way of thinking about it that I think is destructive, and there's another way of thinking about it that's helpful. If that person is not releasing an album that a lot of people in and around her life that are better than her and more experienced, like if they're all saying, this is great, you could really move people, you could really change people, this is a wonderful work of art, and you should put it out, and she's still not doing it because she doesn't think it's good enough, then they may have to look in the mirror and go, why am I saying that? Am I afraid to step into my own shoes? Do I not think I'm good enough, like as a person? Do I have, issues that are always going to hold me back in this spot? Because the other way to look at it is like there's an optimistic train of thought to being a perfectionist. Like I had another piano teacher who used to tell me, you know what, it's coming along. It's just cooking right now, but it's going to get there. So I always look at it that way, like it's cooking, it's coming along, it's going to get there. And at some point the food's going to be done and it's time to serve it, or else you're going to overburn it and you might as well tell everybody like dinner's off, which you don't want to do that.
Exactly.
So I think the notion of perfectionism is fine as long as it's optimistic and encouraging and not like self-loathing, because ultimately she may have a lot of really smart people pitting her record up against a lot of artists that she wants to exist next to. And just from a sheer quality standpoint, Amy, it might not be good enough.
Yeah,
but
sure.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad, right? She doesn't suck. She's not, it's not that it's never going to happen. It's just that right now, she may not feel like she has the catalog or the platform to like really step out into the world and say, here I am. And you know what? I'd almost rather her continue to build her brand and engage people in different ways in the meantime, and then make that push when she's truly ready. Because I can tell you, I've heard way too many records that put the cart before the horse. And they put out something that they wrote 10 songs and they put out 2, as opposed to writing like 100 songs and putting out 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they get so caught up in their Facebook numbers and their lists and all that sort of thing that, yes, it's important, but it has to like boil down to something. You know what I mean? Like if 80% of your time is spent on all the things that are supposed to be supporting the work of art, then like what are you promoting? I think you got to make like a pie chart where most of it is your art, your thing, your like widget, whether it's like imaginary or physical to the world. That's got to be like most of it, right? And then, as you get closer to something where you feel like you can put it out, then you can start to like readdress that pie chart as you go along. Okay, so how many songs do you have? 5. Okay, well, guess what? 90% of your pie chart for the next year needs to be songs. If you want to be a songwriter, if you want to be in that space of like Carole King or Corinne Bailey Rae or like people that are self-contained and write their own stuff. What do? They write, and they write signature great freaking songs, and that's really hard to do. So you might want to like delegate your time to where like 10% of it is do a nice cover, a video, an email blast, and then get back in the studio for another 2 weeks and don't talk to anybody, like because you got catching up to do. And then after a year, readdress the pie chart. Okay, now I have 100 songs. I feel really good about the lane, the space I'm in. I feel like I've talked to a lot of people that are better than me. That's another big thing. You better be hanging out with people that are a lot more experienced and better at you and that can beat you up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no sense in taking things too personally from, like, you know, the 17-year-old whatever that comes to your show and like texts the whole time. I mean, what, you know, like, that's, consider the source. You know what I mean? But then you address it a year, and you go, now that I have 100 songs, now that I have a lane, now that I feel like I can really step out, okay, it's time to start figuring out how I put it out. So I'm going to switch my pie chart around for a little bit. I'm still going to write because it's important to write. I'm still going to gig because it's important to gig. But now I've got this great material written in the now, ready for the now. I got to start putting the pieces together to, like, get it out into the world. So it's funny that you've asked me this question because I feel like I'm on that side of my pie chart now. I've been in development for 2 years. My collaborator and I have about 135 song catalog, a quarter of which we're going to shop for sync licensing and work with other artists. And then 2 portions of it that are going to back up records I'm releasing over the next 3 years. So, you know, and then we'll continue to write on a small scale with material that supports and challenges it. But if you put me in a room and you held a gun to my head and said, you got to put out an album, like, I'm ready to put out 2. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now I've got all of this time in my pie chart to support, to tweet, to Facebook, to build a brand, consult a publicist, engage my fans, figure out my demo, get out and play college shows, like, write all the charts, do all the things that are important once you have something to sell. Once you have a work of art that you feel like is ready and you can align yourself with, that's been, you know, validated by a lot of people that are better than you. So I know that was a really long answer, but if I were to talk to that girl, I would want to know all of those things. And if that's why she's not putting out a record, good for her. Yeah. But if she has all that, she's still not putting it out because she has other things, well, guess what? Sometimes your abilities and your art and what you offer are more important than you.
Mm-hmm.
They can help people. They can create a better world. It can allow people to feel that don't know how, to where now you're just spitting in the universe's face. Yeah. And I want to know why.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're going to have you on again, Dan, I think.
Sure, yeah.
We've run out of time.
Anytime.
But I have really enjoyed how real that you've been with the call and bringing, again, your experience and not theory. I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, that's all we got. No, so of course, I'm sure listeners want to know, where can they find you, Dan?
DanOrlandoMusic.com. And my social media handle is @DanOrlandoMusic. So for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Facebook.com/DanOrlandoMusic. That's where you can track me down. If you go to my website and you scroll to the bottom of my social feed, you can subscribe to our newsletter. The first one talks about the recent gig I played, which was a huge honor. It was called the Power of Love Gala in Las Vegas. It raises money for the Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health. And it was honoring Tony Bennett's 90th birthday party. So I sang with Jordin Sparks. We had Herbie Hancock, Steven Tyler, Chris Bodie, Darius Rucker, James Corden hosted. There was an auction. They raised $15 million this year. And so what we did was gave people a little, like, journal to where I just kind of, like, bared my soul and told people, like, exactly how I was feeling, like, in the moment throughout the whole experience. So if you go to my website, you can scroll down, sign up for that. And, you know, since we're wrapping up the development phase, this is an opportunity for people. Like, I want people to grow with us and see the process. But that is a way to get, like, the more exclusive content as we roll all of this out. So yeah, DanOrlandoMusic.com, @DanOrlandoMusic. Stay in touch, everyone on this podcast, and tell your friends about it, because it seems like this is a really fun outlet to learn and grow. So I'm really happy for you, Amy Leo.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Again, this was Amy Leo from ReviveYourSanity.com. And if you, as a listener, are also interested in experiencing what in my view, Dan has shared about having a lot of psychological freedom in his life and that how that supports him very much. We actually do have conversations like that in the mental health education kind of sphere, and we're holding some retreats. So we're going to be in Costa Rica in August for my birthday, whoop, whoop, whoop. And we're actually doing a trip to India in February. So if folks want to find out more information about that, they can reach me at amy@amyleo.com or go to reviveyoursanity.com. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Dan and Meg.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Well, Dan is just an amazing human being. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. My biggest take homes for today. I really loved how Dan invited us all to get into the conversation of humanity by not just dreaming or thinking about doing something, but really getting real with yourself and asking the question, what is it that you do in life? What is it that elevates you and that makes you part of the conversation of humanity? All the other stuff is figuring out how to do that more. And I truly appreciated his practical approach that he expects setbacks, but that he just takes each day, each gig, each song, step by step, but that everything he does in his life is in support of his passions, in support of what lights him up, and also supports his greater hopes and goals. If you want to get more inspirational and practical conversations for escaping the actual and/or mental rat race delivered straight to your device, you can subscribe on iTunes. Also, if you do have an iPhone or an iPad, there's that little purple podcast app, and you can find us by typing right in the search engine, Escaping the Rat Race with Amy Leo. If you do happen to be on a Mac or a computer where you can access iTunes, it would also mean a lot to us if you left us a review, because we are a new podcast show and those reviews really help other people that could really benefit from the show find us. Alrighty, that's all I have for today. Again, my name is Amy Leo from reviveyoursanity.com. Please, please, please keep rocking.